So I'm not like, I wouldn't call myself like a super soy face MCU fan. When I think soy face MCU fan, I think the kind of guys that are dressing up to go to the nighttime like premieres of the MCU movies and like doing things like screaming when Tom Hiddleston comes out on stage at Comic-Con, even going to Comic-Con to see those kind of things. That's what I imagine when I think of like a soy-facing MCU fan. Now, to be clear here, I'm not the kind of person who makes it a personality trait of mine to shit on popular things. I'll like do it ironically a little bit as a meme, but like I never actually mean it purely because a thing is popular. I try not to fall into that trap. I think it's kind of cringe and bad to do and basic as fuck. The problem was I didn't always think like that. For a very, very long time, I was of the impression the MCU was drivel, and I just wasn't. I didn't even watch any of the movies or anything. Eventually, though, I ended up watching. I believe it was Black Panther. Might have been my first MCU movie. If not, it was Captain America: Civil War. I just know Black Panther was in it, and I was surprised by how entertaining it was, first and foremost, as well as like how more three-dimensional it was than I expected it to be, because I didn't like superhero movies. And from there, I had actually gotten enticed mostly by the hype and FOMO of Infinity War about to come out. I binged all the MCU movies, and I felt like quite the fool for what I'd believed before. My conception of the MCU was very negative and very misconceived. It's not perfect or anything, but I think it's nice content. I think of it very much like the junk food of content broadly, though occasionally you get some shining gems in the MCU that are definitely like quality-wise beyond like the standard pretty good you expect from the MCU. Never forget Denims doesn't like Moon Knight. Oh god, I saw that on Twitter. Me and Denims can't be friends anymore. Moon Knight is my favorite MCU property. I don't know how she doesn't like Moon Knight. It is literally like the least MCU-ish MCU thing. I don't know. I'm going to argue with her about that. Regardless, though, the MCU, if any of you know about it, it goes in phases, right? And the phase 1 through 3 was about like the Infinity Saga and Thanos and all of that, yada yada. We are now in phase 4, which is sort of a new reset saga, kind of. We're on a new story path, new setup for the future of the MCU and everything. And because of that, a lot of MCU fans, or anti-fans, I should say, the toxic people, like to say that the MCU has fallen off, it's going to be garbage in phase 4, and they just like keep on saying this, but then we keep on getting like some of the best content the MCU has had in a long time, like No Way Home, Moon Knight. I know some people are iffy on it, but WandaVision was, while not perfect, pretty damn creative and cool. We watched every episode of WandaVision as it came out in watch parties in my Discord, and we had so much fun for hours in the Discord, me, fans, and my friends just like theorizing about what will happen in the next episode of WandaVision. Like, that shit was so fun. Having something like that to look forward to, I like it. And it's why I like the MCU, because they're constantly pumping out pretty good content. And I like the idea of a shared universe and crossovers. It's fun, it's cool, it's exciting. It's something that I think culturally everybody can bond over. However, the MCU, being so popular, does attract a lot of derision. And a lot of that derision is political. Disney, in an attempt to appeal to a larger audience, is naturally making their content, particularly MCU content, more diverse and more suggestively progressive, so to say. What they're trying to do is appeal to more progressive demographics, and this has resulted in a bunch of anti-fans and conservatives and grifters realizing they can make a big penny off of screaming about Disney's attempts to incorporate even the smallest examples of, inclusivity or representation in their media. And the funny thing is, it's such milquetoast examples that it makes it so clear that the people who are complaining about it really just can't handle there being brown people or women or whatever in their media. And they'll swear up and down, left and right, that's not the case, but it absolutely is the fucking case, okay? And they'll also swear they don't care, but clearly they do. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna go ahead and watch this video, see if I agree with it, see if I don't. It just popped up in my recommended before I even started stream. I didn't even go looking for it. No one recommended it to me. It was YouTube that recommended it to me. So yeah, we're gonna watch it at 1.5 speed while I eat some chicken nuggies. So yeah, let's go. Decline of the MCU, and when I'm done with the MCU Phase 4. For those that don't know, MCU is like a Gamergator reactionary anti like female women Mary Sue's and in MCU movies nerd culture. It's the GTA Mission Past song. Let's go.
Okay, let me just say
nerd
this
culture.
Right Eowyn and Arwen from Lord of the Rings, Hermione Granger from Harry Potter, Disney's Mulan from 1998, not the hell.
Bullshit. I know what you're about to say. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being presumptuous here, but I've heard this argument before, and I'm sorry, but bullshit, okay? If The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, came out today, and the scene where Arwen says, "I am no man," and bodies the Witch King of Angmar, if that came out today, regardless of the fact that Tolkien, wrote that in the original book, Eowyn, sorry. You fucking got me. Fake fan. It's not that I'm high and starving. Yeah, when Eowyn kills the Witch King of Angmar and fucking bodies him, granted, with the help of Pippin, or was it Merry? Now I'm really fucked. Like, if you did that today, if that came out today, no. You couldn't get away with that today. I'm sorry. I'm not saying this guy would be upset about it, necessarily. However, a large part of the Comicsgate community, I guess it is, would be mad.
Spawn from 2020, Lucy Hartfilia from Fairy Tail, Elizabeth Swann from Pirates of the Caribbean, and Padme Amidala from Star Wars. These are all some of my personal favorite characters in fiction. They are excellent characters who just so happen to be some of the best strong female characters ever.
On Padme. Padme wasn't exactly a strong female character, I would argue, until the Clone Wars drop.
Written, in my humble opinion. Just thought I'd lead with that, just to squash the sexist pig comments from the bottom of the barrel of brainlet trash we're likely to encounter in the comment section going forward. The same brainlets who say you can't comment on the quality and status of the MCU without having to watch every single one of their latest disposable dumpster fire releases. Yeah, I haven't seen Morbius, and that's a pile of garbage. I haven't seen Suicide Squad in 2016, and that's a flaming pile of shit. And I haven't seen Ghostbusters 2016, and that movie is beyond shit. You can accurately infer a judgment based on the plot synopsis, movie clips, and of course rely...
You can probably derive a fairly decent personal opinion on movie clips, trailers, and synopsises. Synopsises? What's the plural of synopsis? I don't fucking know. Whatever it is. You could probably form your own personal opinion on whether you'd want to watch a movie or like it or not based on that. But if you're a YouTuber whose job it is, I would think, to talk about this media, judge it, grade it essentially, and assess it to an audience, you'd think you kind of have a responsibility to be a little bit more educated on it, do the bare minimum of watching the thing you're criticizing.
Word of mouth, and let's not forget the trailers. Oh yes, those trailers that Marvel fanatics fawn over without even finishing the damn thing, while simultaneously saying that you can't judge the movie based on the same fucking trailer.
Okay, this guy's having a moment.
Fanatics fawn over without even finishing the damn thing, while
is he talking about MCU trailer reactions? And people, getting excited midway through the trailer?
Simultaneously saying that you can't judge the movie based on the same fucking trailer.
Wait, is this guy arguing that you're hypocritical if you say you shouldn't judge a movie before it's come out based on its trailer? Because you're excited for the movie to come out, so clearly you think it's gonna be good. Is that this guy's logic? I was hoping I'd at least agree with some of this video so I could eat my nuggies, but apparently not.
Yeah, some logic. But fanatics don't deal in logic, only their precious fee-fees. Like I've said before, and I've said several times, they can't be bargained with, and they can't be reasoned with. Anyway, welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's your pal, Noms.
He's very brave. He's very brave for saying this. He could be... His life's in great danger by speaking out against the mob.
And this video is going to act as somewhat of a part 2 or continuation of my previous video, because in my previous video I said I was done with the MCU, and make no mistake, that's absolutely still the case. I still haven't seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the latest MCU release, and I have no plans to. But as the video progresses, I will certainly need to make reference to it, since it's the latest and possibly best example of what's currently wrong with the MCU, and completely rotting the product root and stem. I previously spoke about the decline of the MCU being due to many reasons: overexposure, a lack of overall substance, corporatism crushing creativity, terrible releases, an over-reliance on nostalgia bait and cameos, and an insufferable fanatical fandom culture surrounding it, contributing to falsified hype trains built by mainstream media and YouTube theory cultists trying to prime an expired cow for rotten milk when the time comes. I was very pleased at the reception that my previous video received, relieved to see there were so many of you who were just as fed up with the MCU.
I'm sorry. Is this not just like a guy who's just bitter about people having fun and enjoying a thing? I enjoy MCU content enough to recognize some of these YouTubers. I watched The Real Rejects way back when they were just like a movie and game trailer reaction channel in like 2015 or 2014. I discovered them from their reaction to the Assassin's Creed Unity trailer, I think. And then the, what was the other one? New Rockstars or whatever. I watched those channels and just like, I liked, for example, I really like Moon Knight. I like theorizing about it and stuff. So I'd watch some of the new Rockstar videos about it. Like, it's just fun. It's kind of like sort of like a cultural event of sorts that happens every month or two. You know, a new MCU thing drops and everyone's talking about it. It's fun. It's fun to be like, have a thing coming out every couple months or every once in a while that everyone's talking about and excited about. It's cool. It's fun. I don't really know what else to say other than fun is good. I like having fun, and it's fun.
Hype trains built by mainstream media and YouTube theory cultists trying to prime an expired cow for rotten milk when the time comes. I was very pleased at the reception that my previous video received, relieved to see there were so many of you who were just as fed up with the MCU as I was, and based on the reception Doctor Strange 2 has received, at least so far, I think it's safe to say the video was pretty spot on. But there's one really huge reason why the MCU has been declining, especially in recent years, that I purposefully neglected to mention in my previous video. And this decline, in large part, is due to the forced political woke agenda that has been largely the source of the MCU's plummeting writing quality. All of the characters I mentioned in my intro, you'll notice I labeled them as characters first and strong females second. And that's exactly my point, because the problem is that used to be the case for female characters in the MCU, but no longer. See, back when the MCU started, there was a far more organic approach to character development. Characters weren't created to appease political correctness or some kind of feminist agenda. The characters were written to go on a journey where they would acquire strength, hope, regret, kindness, dread, intelligence, truth, all the characteristics that make characters relatable and an audience gravitate to them. The MCU, at least in Phase 1, had plenty of likable, feminine, yet strong female characters. Sure, sometimes they were a damsel in distress, but being a damsel in distress doesn't make a character weak or pathetic, it simply makes them vulnerable.
Can we think of like one okay, in Phase 1, the first character that comes to mind is Black Widow. I'm sorry, buddy. You don't want to come at me from the, I guess, anti-feminist perspective talking about Phase 1 Black Widow, dog. Okay? Come on, brother. All right? Who else? Who can we think of any? Jane Foster? But what did Jane Foster do? I mean, I guess she was pretty cool. Pepper Potts. Pepper Potts was cool, but she didn't really do anything in Phase 1. Yeah, literally Phase 1 was the period of the MCU where we had the highest, like, concentration of straight, white, cis-het male main characters and side characters. Past Phase 1, that's when you start to have a more dilution of diversity into the MCU's cast. So that's why Phase 1 is his favorite, because that's back when they kept it nice and white. I like when YouTubers like that. I'll make a joke like that, and then a YouTuber like this from like when I respond to their videos will get like really mad and think that I'm like saying they're racist or something. Listen, I don't know if this guy is racist, but I don't know. Maybe we'll find out by the end of this video. Maybe he'll say some sussy wussy shit.
And a character's vulnerability is also one aspect that helps make them relatable. Pepper Potts was a damsel in distress at times, but she's also the one who helped Tony run Stark Industries, and protected him in other ways, like actively trying to prevent him from being his own worst enemy. She didn't need to put on an armored iron suit to be a strong character.
After all these years, Tony still has you picking up the dry cleaning.
I do anything and everything that Mr. Stark requires, including occasionally taking out the trash. Would that be all?
Jane Foster was also a damsel at times.
Wait, but like, she was his secretary. Wait, she was subservient to him at that point. Her job in that scene was literally to kick out the girls that Iron Man had fucked the night before, and he didn't want to deal with the drama of kicking the girl out, so he had Pepper Potts, his secretary and manager or whatever, and future wife, by the way, do it for him. And that's the scene that we just saw. That was her kicking the lady out. Like, dog, come on. You're reaching here. You're straining on this reach.
But she was also an established scientist driven by her own curiosity and ambition.
She's
also the one person who took the time to fundamentally
good.
understand Thor, who at the time was essentially the fallen god of thunder, and she was the person who helped.
I feel like Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, in the Thor movies she's in so far, besides Love and Thunder, I would assume, is like, she's an interesting character, and I think she's a good example. But as far as like strong female characters go, not until Thor: Love and Thunder, I'd argue. I don't think she's even like killed a monster or anything. Oh, who's the hot lady from S.H.I.E.L.D.? Maria Hill. Yeah. Maria Hill can assassinate me. I would allow it. Not that my resistance would make a difference. Yeah, no. She's a good example, actually. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, there we go.
Help Thor find his redemption to regain his power. Peggy Carter was a strong feminine army officer, but she had kindness, compassion, and perspective. She wasn't attracted to Steve Rogers because he was Captain America. She was attracted to his bravery. He was the weakest guy in the army, and the most unappealing guy on the dance floor, but he's the one she wanted to dance with. In fact, after Steve got his powers and she thought he was turning into one of the army's playboys, she turned off him faster than the Thanos snap.
What do you think?
Yes, I think it works.
And finally,
That was the worst scene in the movie. I'm sorry, guys. That was the worst and dumbest scene in the fucking movie. And I hated it when it happened. For one, she is a soldier firing upon an allied soldier in the middle of an allied base during World War II, without warning, pulling out her gun, shooting at Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, aka, at that point, America's best hope for saving the world. And he just luckily raised his shield fast enough when he noticed her raising her gun to block it. She didn't even know if the vibranium shield would work. Like, and she was just, and it's because she was pissed off that he was cheating on her. From her perspective. He wasn't, but still. She is framed as distinctively in the wrong there, and it literally does the, hysterical bitch literally could have killed him because she's mad. Isn't that funny? Women, am I right, guys? Would literally almost kill you just because they're mad and walk away, because, women are, they get away with murder, you know? Women can get away with murder, am I right, guys? That's the level of humor we're operating on in that scene. I don't know. I never liked that scene.
that brings me to Black Widow, who at the time was the lone heroine of the Avengers. Someone who captured the hearts of many fans who grew fond of her, and others who idolized her as someone to look up to. But she was far from perfect. She was undoubtedly the exception to the other three characters mentioned in the MCU in Phase 1, but unlike Pepper and Jane, she wasn't a damsel, and unlike Peggy Carter, she had a far more active role in combat, and not to mention a lethal set of skills as an assassin. However, she had a very endearing charm about her. She was snarky, playful, funny, compassionate. Her long friendship with Hawkeye gave a very human center to the character, and she harbored a lot of regret for atrocities that she had committed in her line of work in the past. At least we assumed it was in her line of work, but this alluded to a very mysterious backstory for the character that many fans, including myself, wanted to see explored or at least referenced more, and for Black Widow to be given her own solo movie that fans were clamoring for to be made for a goddamn decade. Well, at least that was until we finally got it, and it turned out to be complete and utter shit. Oh, but there is a number of reasons behind why that happened as well, which I'll eventually get to. So what happened exactly? Where did this organic approach to character writing change? When did the agenda pushing start? And when did the quality of writing for particular female characters in the MCU plummet? To be fair, I think most of Phase 2 still seems to be on the straight and narrow, and even introduced one of my new favorites, at least for the time, in Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, though that has since drastically changed, given how they've completely assassinated her character and turned her into a psychopath. The only real instance I saw the MCU push political correctness into one of their movies in Phase 2 was Iron Man 3, where the white male antagonist...
I don't get why they're so mad. I'm sorry, spoiler, I guess. The movie's been out for a hot minute. Spoilers for Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, I'm just gonna say it. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, is the villain of that movie. By the end, she's definitely, like, kind of turned things around and presumably kills herself to make things right. And I hope they do follow through on that with her being dead. I do think it's a good ending for her story there. There's not really anything anywhere else for her story to go, and I think it was confirmed she's dead or something. I think that was an interesting way to take it. I think that was better than, like, having her be a hero. No way Wanda is dead, yeah. To be fair, she is pretty powerful for that to kill her, so it wouldn't surprise me if she was alive. I just heard some comment on YouTube say it was confirmed she was dead. But yeah, I don't know.
Antagonist, Aldrich Killian, was nothing but a worthless, pathetic incel with one of the most pitiful motivations ever. And in addition to that, absolutely disrespected the shit out of Iron Man's source material and his arch nemesis, who was supposed to be the Mandarin and not this freak.
My name's Trevor Slattery.
I am the Mandarin! On top of that, they couldn't even let Iron Man defeat his own pathetic villain. They had Pepper Potts, who was injected with that bullshit plot device serum, and who had no combat experience. They had her survive a fatal fall and come back.
Wait, but wasn't Pepper Potts good, though? Wait, so Pepper Potts isn't... You can't use her as an example of a good female character now.
back to destroy his villain with ease. It's worth pointing out for this and many other reasons that Iron
Also,
Man 3
she
is the
literally
worst
had
MCU movie and my
superpowers.
personally most hated one. Oh, don't get me wrong, Captain Marvel is god-awful, and I'll get to it, but no, before people start playing, yet again, the sexist pig card, the MCU movie that I actually hate the most has a white male protagonist, so eat that shit. But that being said, as much as I'd like to blame this abomination of shitty writing due to forced political agendas, I'm pretty sure this was for the most
You believe that perhaps I have some political positions or internalized biases that could lead to some, maybe some positions on this media that's worth reconsidering? Well, did you know my least favorite Marvel movie stars a white guy? Got him. Left wing destroyed. Moving on.
part, just Shane Black being an absolute fucking dumb cunt, which is just par for the course for that hack at this point. Truthfully, the first standalone MCU movie to suffer an enormous blow to its character writing due to forcing identity politics into the mix was none other than Thor fucking Ragnarok. It's the first time probably since Iron Man 3 that I remember absolutely despising a character in the MCU, and that character is the woke disaster known as Valkyrie. Fucking Valkyrie. This obnoxious, rude, unlikable, cuntish Mary Sue that walks around with this insufferable
isn't Valkyrie in the comics? Cool.
Attitude, being a smug little bitch to absolutely everyone she meets, kills everyone without asking questions, and with ease, subdues Thor, the God of Thunder, with a taser. Let me just reiterate that for a second. She tases the God of Thunder, and somehow that actually works. Yeah, seriously, just fuck Thor Ragnarok, honestly. But I'm not done ripping into this bitch. She turns the Hulk into her own...
Okay, this guy hates Thor Ragnarok, which is probably like... It was one of the first MCU movies I watched. I had no expectations going in, but I was surprised by how funny it was, and I look back at it as like one of my... It's definitely the best Thor movie, which isn't saying much, to be fair. But, like, I feel like if you hate Thor Love and Thunder and you claim to be an MCU fan, I'm going to become skeptical because you're literally talking about one of the most beloved, like, widely beloved MCU movies. That's like, even if you don't give a shit about these characters, the continuity, it's still a fun, enjoyable, yeah, Thor Ragnarok, sorry, enjoyable, like, movie on its own. Like, in its own contained thing. Like, I don't know. This feels like a guy who really... whose viewership and ability to upload a new video depends on him hating the MCU. Let's just say that. You know, this seems like an upload from a guy who can't upload another video this week unless he hates the MCU. You know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong. There are criticisms, but, like, come on. Thor Ragnarok is not a garbage fire by any means.
Little child's plaything. And she bests Loki, the god of fucking mischief, in a hand-to-hand fucking fight.
She's
and even subdues him, barely breaking a sweat, and she does this all while she's fucking drunk.
That's what Thor does in the next movie.
This character is the fact that since she was part of Asgard's Valkyrie...
Okay, Thor then literally, in the next few movies later, while fat and drunk, fights Thanos, the most powerful being in the universe, and wins. Technically. Like, I don't know. For one thing, we're not doing the which MCU character should be able to beat who right now, are we? Because, like, these movies and shows do not keep consistent the, like, squishiness of characters, okay? Did you guys notice in Multiverse of Madness that, like, there'd be an explosion and Wanda would get thrown, like, 20 feet and smash into a stone wall and get up? Like, she has, like, a healing factor or some sort of superhuman resilience, and it's like, I guess so, she's powerful, but, like, in the comics, she's a glass cannon. The MCU does that, just, like, basically as a default, gives their main characters and their heroes, like, a resilience and healing factor almost by default.
All of her comrades actually died in a battle with Hela a long time ago, and somehow... she managed to fucking escape. This is meant to be like a hard-hitting moment where you're actually meant to feel sorry for Valkyrie. Like I'm supposed to give a shit after this bitch has spent 2 hours alienating the audience from being able to like her. Because you see, the audience rightfully tends to hate when you bring in a new character that's just there to be a mouthpiece for feminism or woke political ideologies.
Wait, listen. Your opinion is valid, okay? Your opinion is valid. That's fine if that's how you feel. If you think that, like, this character was just put in to appeal to woke agendas and she's a bad character, whatever, fine. I can't argue with you on that. However, what I do find very funny is he's willing to say that this doesn't work with audiences. Audiences don't like it. He's appealing to, like, the favoritism of the majority. Thor Ragnarok was critically received by audiences and critics alike. Critically received? But positively received, like overwhelmingly positively received. When people think the funny MCU movie, they think Thor Ragnarok, because it's the funniest MCU movie, without a doubt. Like, and one of the most fun and, like, enjoyable to watch, like, in terms of, like, a fun movie, you know? Like, I don't know, like, the numbers are there, It's the silent majority. Trash reactionaries act like everyone agrees with them. Yeah, like this guy's probably gonna start arguing like, yeah, I know the reviews, but most people who didn't like it probably wouldn't bother to review or something like that. I don't know.
That only appears to be a strong female character by shitting all over the characters the audience actually loves. Instead of, writing Valkyrie as an actual character, perhaps. So you kind of got to do that first before we can gravitate to her. Seriously, the only thing that would have been more on the nose about the agenda you were pushing with her is if she wore fucking rainbow garments. What's funny is they could have used Lady Sif from the previous Thor movies, who many criticized for being boring and forgettable, but in actuality...
To be clear, by the way, if the idea of LGBT people and, like, people from, like, groups that are not what are hegemonically considered to be like the privileged groups or whatever, like the sort of hegemonic white cishet male whatever kind of groups, like if inclusion of these characters is something that you consider to be an agenda, fair enough, sure, you can consider it to be an agenda. Is it a bad agenda though? I want you to explain to me why the inclusion of these characters is a bad thing. You made the argument that it's led to a decrease in the quality of the writing of these mediums, but you haven't explained how. How do you know that the reason why these characters are bad is because they're being diversity quoted in and they're not having any effort put into their characters? Like, how do you know this? How can you claim this? You can't. It's just a point you can make because it really feels good. It's unfalsifiable. People that agree with him or are inclined to potentially agree with him will find the argument receptive, but anybody who, isn't a LARPing dipshit, who doesn't think that this kind of shit is the end of the world, hopefully wouldn't fall for it.
The first Thor movie and Thor: The Dark World simply didn't put enough time into fleshing out the character. The opportunity for this did present itself with Ragnarok. It's just a shame the actress wasn't available for filming the movie at the time due to a scheduling conflict, but the way I see it, given who was in charge of the project and what their agenda was and what they were trying to push, Lady Sif dodged a fucking bullet because Kevin Feige showed no interest in wanting to put any effort into understanding
Why is the agenda bad?
fleshing her out. So Kevin Feige and Taika Waititi took it upon themselves to bring in a new female character who, this time, they could race band the shit out of, which is probably the most thought they put into the character, and ultimately that ended up being Valkyrie. It's also not surprising to me that she's also played by Tessa fucking Thompson, essentially Hollywood's go-to girl for wokenomics. And yeah, before likely many of you point out to me, they also race bent Heimdall, but that was just a casting choice with the best intent.
Dude, these guys, God, so angry. Oh, here's his excuse for why he's not mad about the Heimdall race swap. They have to do the same thing about the race swap of Nick Fury, too.
Since it was before the woke infestation in the MCU began, and
yep,
Heimdall was actually cast with a good actor.
That's their excuse now. Yeah, it's because this character, we didn't complain about it because it was before the infestation of the woke MCU, when in reality what it was before the whole moral panic culture war grift meta started to complain about any popular media having, minorities in it, in the cast. Race bend? They're fucking aliens. They're aliens! They're gods! What are you talking about, dude?
Actor being Idris Elba, because Idris Elba is fucking amazing. The same cannot be said for Tessa Thompson.
Not wrong.
I wish I could say Thor Ragnarok was the only time she cucked Chris Hemsworth on screen and contributed to ruining a fucking IP. Oh, and on top of that, somehow they have Thor give Valkyrie the keys to the fucking Kingdom of Asgard at the end of Avengers Endgame. Like she fucking...
Alright, I'm gonna tell you something right now. The easiest way to know that a media review YouTuber isn't worth listening to is when they blame the actors for the bad writing and directing of a movie. When they shit on a good actor and say, insert actor we know is capable of acting well, like Tessa Thompson can act, when insert actor we know can act well, ruined this movie because the movie was written poorly and had bad directing or editing or whatever. And it's like, dudes like this really get off on finding a scapegoat to drop the responsibility of, as he said, the destroying of an IP on, and it's very convenient to drop it on Tessa Thompson, the, as he said, woke darling of Hollywood, I think he said. It's very convenient just to, drop it all on one person, say, yeah, this actress is the one responsible for all of it, when it's like, are you fucking stupid? Do you know how movie and show productions work? You think Tessa Thompson's responsible for the downfall of Men in Black? Correct me if I'm wrong, did she, produce it or, co-direct or direct it or something? My understanding is she just played either the main or secondary, character. Yeah.
Didn't earn any of it. Fuck you, Kevin Feige. But we're jumping a little too far ahead. I'll get back to Endgame, don't you worry. And this brings us nicely to the subject of MCU's first female-led superhero movie, about a mysterious S.H.I.E.L.D. assassin struggling with her past who's sent on a top-secret mission that... Nah, instead we get the remarkably unmarvelous Captain Marvel, who, you guessed it, is yet another Mary Sue character that the fans didn't care for nor wanted over one that had already earned their investment in Black Widow. Fans wanted a Black Widow movie because they liked the character, but the problem is that...
Can I just say, Captain Marvel is far, 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 far from my favorite MCU property, okay? I want to make that very clear here. However, so many fucking people totally misunderstood Captain Marvel, it feels like. You guys realize for the first, like, 2/3 of the movie, she's a bad guy, right? She's working for the bad guys, participating in a genocide for the first 2/3 of the movie. She's literally a space Nazi, an arrogant, mean, rude, violent, short-tempered space Nazi engaging in an intergalactic genocide for 2/3 of the movie. And by the 2/3 point is when she realizes, oh, wait, oh, fuck, oh, no. And that's when things kind of turn around. The scenes and the clips of people, of like, from this movie that people complain about, of like, Captain Marvel's unlikable, she's an asshole, she's Mary Sue. It's like, the scenes you're showing are the scenes where you're supposed to, where she's the villain. These are like they literally drew a comparison to when the Terminator shows up in the past, in the first Terminator movie. She shows up and steals a dude's motorcycle. They literally took it from Terminator. The stealing motorcycle boots and everything, that, like in the clothes and whatnot. And she takes his clothes, his motorcycle, and his boots and stuff. And it's literally like a reference to that because she's literally arrived on Earth as the bad guy. And then she smashes his hand. Literally a reference to Terminator 2. Like, I don't know. Like, listen, I'm not a big fan of Captain Marvel. But a lot of you motherfuckers didn't really pick up on where they were going with this movie. And maybe that's the directors, writers, or whatever's fault for not making that clearer, but I picked up on it.
She contradicted the Kevin Feige narrative because a sizable chunk of Phase 3 and now ultimately Phase 4 has been dedicated to the narrative that, to quite simply put it, is called Now It's Their Turn. Oh look, Marvel have decided to do their first ever female lead superhero movie. But that's already been done before. Not to mention the fact that Kevin Feige was shitting bricks after DC, for better or worse, beat them to the punch. Don't look...
Is this guy a DC EU stan? Listen, I've tried to give the DC stuff a chance. My favorite DC property so far is Peacemaker. Oh, wait. Do you think this guy didn't like Peacemaker because of the wokeness? Wonder Woman 1 was pretty good. Dog, my first time watching Wonder Woman 1, I was getting drunk off my fucking ass, drinking Canadian Mist whiskey and eating lamb chops, like big, greasy lamb chops. And I got so drunk, I didn't remember any of the movie the next morning. And I watched it again, and it felt like I was watching it for the first time. I was 18.
Now, but Marvel Studios has broken through the barriers of oppression and made the first ever black superhero movie with a person of color as their lead. Newsflash, that's already been done before. Decades ago, in fact. And I might add, has been done far more fucking better. Seriously, Blade was awesome. And if there's one thing that might actually bring me back to the MCU, it's how much they are going to fuck up the reboot, which will likely be sold on a Wesley Snipes multiverse cameo.
I hope Blade is good. Moon Knight being as good as it is makes me think Blade will be good. Listen, Blade and Moon Knight fall very closely together in regards to thematic, like, in theme and feel and whatnot. If they were able to pull off Moon Knight, I think Disney and the MCU can pull off Blade. I don't think it'll be as violent of a iteration as we're seeing here, but I think we'll get like a pretty damn good Blade from the MCU. I'm pretty sure. I watched the newest Suicide Squad movie, The Suicide Squad, and I watched Peacemaker, and they were pretty good. I also watched the Snyder Cut and a few other DCEU movies that are more recent. I watched, obviously, 2017 Suicide Squad, or 2016 one, and yeah, I know everyone hated that one, but yeah, that was shitty. I didn't really like the first Superman, the Man of Steel one. Not a big fan of that. Didn't like Batman versus Superman. Wasn't really a big fan of the Snyder Cut, if I'm being honest. It was okay. Like, yeah, I'm not a DC guy. I've liked the MCU a lot more.
Or some shit. And make no mistake, this false narrative of now it's their turn and we did it first was one of the biggest selling points for each of those movies. But in the case of Captain Marvel, it's particularly egregious because fans were asking for a Black Widow movie for a decade because she was a well-beloved, strong female character, and actually, she was just a character. A character. On those grounds alone, she should have been the choice over Captain Marvel. But like I said, narratives, agendas, and all that. The first ever Marvel female-led superhero movie, not really, but undoubtedly the first in the MCU, was Captain Marvel. Much to
I'd like to have him explain to me why the agenda is bad. What is the agenda and why is it bad? Why is it bad that they're making an active effort to include more we'll say like more like minority representing characters into this media? Like what's the problem with that if you aren't against those groups? You know, that's the little, you know, that's the disagreement we're having here, you know? Ironically, the reason why Black Widow didn't get a movie until recently was because of an agenda. The guy in charge thought a female-led movie wouldn't be as profitable. It's true. If I'm being honest, this dude's gotta be overstating how interesting he thought Black Widow was. I don't believe him. I'm woke, alright? I'm woke and I never gave a shit about Black Widow. She has always been, next to Hawkeye, the least interesting Avenger. I actually think Hawkeye's more interesting. I liked the Hawkeye show more than I liked Black Widow, the movie. Yeah, I never really liked Black Widow because to me, she had like a few different phases. She had 3 different phases in the MCU. I'm sorry, I'm dropping a big truth bomb here, okay? MCU Black Widow has had 3 on-screen phases besides her movie, okay? Because we're counting like up until her movie and like my expectations going in, okay? We had her initial introduction in which she is just a stereotype. She is the hot spy lady who's uber confident and is just a unbreakable external barrier of a sexy spy lady, you know, like that's basically it, right? And then we get a little further in, we start to get to like, you know, the Avengers and stuff like that. Like we actually start to see, you know, like we start to see more of her character get revealed to us as time goes by and we leave phase 1. We get into this phase where she's like the Black Widow that most people know her to be, but then we get depressed, suicidal Black Widow, and then she dies. I don't know. I feel like that like we basically got the story, you know? Like they at least ended her character with her not being a stereotype anymore. She started the MCU as a stereotype. I don't care what anybody says. I will fight you. All right. However, that scene where she's tied up and she's in the dress and she's like fighting the people that have her like captured. You guys saw the titty jiggle in that scene, right? You guys saw the titty jiggle. You guys saw the cleavage bounce. You saw the bouncy wouncy. You when she's fighting the guys while strapped to the chair, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. That's a good fucking scene, all right? Now that right there, that's some good camera work. Okay, fine. Wingo hates the MCU and was like, all right, you had me there.
All of our fucking face palms. And what we ended up getting was a laughably uncompelling abortion. It was a feminist wet dream of Viagra, to put it simply, and irredeemably...
I should say, by the way, the reason why I didn't like Captain Marvel very much and why it's probably pretty low tier for me in regards to MCU movies has to be, and this means a lot from me as like a really woke person, the really cringy ending bit. There's that scene, oh god, that fucking scene where she's like realized her full power and the song starts playing. It's like, I'm just a girl, and she's like steamrolling all the enemies, like because I was watching that scene and like maybe if I'd seen that scene as an 11-year-old girl who hadn't really been on the internet, maybe I would have loved that shit. Maybe that would have just had me hyped as fuck, okay? But as, you know, an adult guy who's a lefty, all I could think about the whole time was, 1, oh my god, I'm cringing, and 2, I can't even look past the cringe and try to enjoy it, because now all I can think of is all the conservatives who are going to try to use this against minorities. This being cringe will be enough to radicalize people to hate minorities. At least a few. It'll play a part, at least. Like, it's just so depressing when that thought goes through your head when you see some shit like that and it makes you cringe. Another really good example is that scene in Endgame where they're like, Peter Parker has the Infinity Gauntlet, and they're like, no, we'll take it. And all the female heroes, like, I don't even know how they explain the diegetic, like, storytelling and how this happened, but, like, all the women, all the female characters on the entire battlefield, that's like 4 or 5 square acres or some shit, all converge around Peter Parker, and It's not even necessary because Captain Marvel can just steamroll through the whole army and deal with it. All of them, like, they all, like, do their... It was super weird, and, like, it broke the immersion, and, like, everybody... I was in the theater on release day when that happened. Everybody in the theater, except a few women in the audience, went... I heard a few just sighs, and I heard just a few... But, like, that was mostly it. And people were hyped again after, like, things moved on from that scene. But, like, that scene, coming from me as a woke guy, is a cringy fucking blemish and an otherwise pretty damn satisfactory conclusion to a pretty massive saga of storytelling.
The unrelatable Mary Sue who got her superpowers by taking what should have been a fatal blast straight to the face from the fucking Tesseract, survives somehow, and whose only obstacle in life to overcome is the supposed depression from the patient.
Okay. My man, my guy, my dude, all right? Tesseracts aren't real. I don't know if you're, like, from Earth 616 or some shit like that, but, like, Tesseracts aren't real. It's a magic space cube. Her shooting it and it giving her superpowers makes sense because they said so. Yeah, also her facing misogyny makes sense. It's like, yeah, if you're an undercover superhero being a woman and you're, like, in a military setting, yeah, you're gonna get shit. Women weren't allowed to, like, fly planes for the military back then in the 90s. In the 90s, by the way. Like, come on. Yeah, and yet, you know what? You know, it's fine. It's fine for some of these movies to be woke. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it. I know it's cringy, and maybe it's not for me, but I know it's for some people. Captain Marvel still did well. People did still like it. It had its audience. Just wasn't for me. It's funny because back in the day, if you guys, like, get in a time machine, you go back in time to, like, Gamergate and that era of the internet, you'll find that their number one argument, their go-to argument against the woke people, you know, who are arguing for inclusivity and progressive messages being included in media was, if you want media to be more woke, go make your own media instead of changing media that already exists. In reference to, like, oh, this game that came out isn't woke enough, we're going to criticize it or whatever, right? Now, of course, the perspective that these woke critics were actually coming from was, we like these games and we like this media, but just because we like something doesn't mean we can't criticize it and recognize it has flaws. However, when you do that to a conservative, it seems like you're arguing that you need to kill all white people and replace all of them, race swap them with minorities, and then it'll be okay. That's what they think. That's what they hear, I guess, when they hear, yeah, I guess some more inclusion is good. Now, to be clear, how this is done, to me, is pretty cringy, but, like, wasn't the argument always just make your own woke oh, I just unplugged the headphones, it would seem. Wasn't the argument always make your own stuff, and now they are. Now they are making their own stuff. Now, like, the woke stuff is coming out on its own, and it's woke, and it's, like, made by the people who wanted to make it, and it's not, like, being pushed on them, it would seem. Like, it's, like... And now they're complaining about it and saying it needs to be stopped. In reality, they were never advocating for the creative freedom of the game, movie, comic, etc. creators that happened to create media that didn't include a lot of minorities. They weren't just defending those people's creative freedom. What they were fighting against were the people suggesting that popular media ought to include more representation of marginalized groups. All along, that was what they were attacking. It becomes clear when you see how fast their position switched once they began attacking already existing media because they decided to make their own woke media.
Patriarchy telling her she can't do this and she can't do that. Oh, and the climax to her journey, the part that's meant to make everyone fall in love with her, is just her taking off the zappy patch and deciding all of a sudden that she's strong and that she won't be held back anymore. Not that she ever was, because she was fucking photon blasting everyone in the face the whole fucking movie. But yeah, she just takes off the zappy patch, something that she could have done at any time, and this ultimately results in her becoming this all-powerful god.
Well, she didn't know what it was.
Even Thor being able to fly at light speed.
I don't even like this movie, and I don't even remember most of it, but I know, like, the response to those things. She could take it off, I'm pretty sure, but I don't think she knew what it was. I'm pretty sure she thought it was more like a tracker slash badge type deal, like a technological enhancement for herself, more so than a dampener. They didn't tell her it was a dampener. She was lied to. She was manipulated by the space Nazis into being a space Nazi for them, and they put that thing on her to dampen her powers so she wouldn't figure out, wait, you're manipulating me and I could literally annihilate all of you. Bye-bye. Listen, I don't like this movie, but that's what it was. It's really hard to overcome mental conditioning. Yeah, I did think it was pretty interesting that, like, she believed she was an alien who was, like, fighting with her fellow space Nazis, but in reality, she was a human who had been given powers, was kidnapped, brainwashed, and had her whole human life before she'd been kidnapped and trained by these alien space Nazis, taken away from her. That was an interesting way to go about it. I thought that was pretty cool, but I think they did butcher the execution to an extent. I didn't like Captain Marvel very much. It's crazy to me that this guy's like so bad at criticizing movies I don't like that I'm like effortlessly recalling things from this movie I barely remember to debunk this guy's criticisms because he's reaching so hard to get mad about a movie that has a woke agenda, quote unquote.
Breathe in space somehow and decimate gigantic starships
Magic.
while laughing at her own
It's a magic space cube.
Like she was a fucking drunk chick at a rave. And if you don't believe me that the release of Captain Marvel wasn't just Kevin Feige trying to rewrite
Wait, it's funny that he says that, like the drunk chick at a rave meme, because in the comics, Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, the specific version of Captain Marvel we're referring to here, is an alcoholic. Am I not wrong? Isn't Carol Danvers in the comics like got a problem when it comes to alcohol? I don't know. I just find it funny that he said that because that's actually quite in character for her, apparently.
History at the last possible fucking moment. This isn't just from a meta standpoint because these fuckers had the nerve to try and tie her fabricated middle fucking name in as the source of Nick Fury's inception for the Avengers. A sad attempt to try and make the entire Infinity Saga revolve
No, I'm
all
pretty
around
sure
her,
she
as if
does.
this was always planned to be the way things would fucking unfold. Despite the fact that Nick Fury had knowledge of Captain Marvel during the entire Infinity Saga and could have paged her at any fucking time. Big
It's a retcon.
fucking yikes.
It's
and
a
like I said, the Black
retcon.
Widow movie was shunned not only because they couldn't preach the message they wanted
Okay, when you start a media franchise, how long's it been since 2008? Like 12, 13 years ago now, I'd say. Like 12 years ago. When you start a media franchise, 14. When you start a media franchise 14 years ago, and the scale starts out as small as Iron Man 1, and now we've ballooned up the scale to where the MCU is now. And I like it. I like how big the MCU is. The bigger it gets, the better it's gotten, in my opinion. The more variety it has, the more options you have to pick from. And eventually, even if you're not really into superhero stuff, something's going to stick to the wall. A good example of this, Lonnie hates superhero stuff and does not like MCU stuff. I've tried to get her into it, just didn't work. Until Moon Knight came along. Moon Knight was the first MCU / superhero property she actually liked because it incorporated horror, mystery, and like just a lot of really interesting creative elements that made the suit up superhero fighty punch scenes, one, feel like they matter a little bit more and not feel like they're as overbearing, you know? Like, most of the story of Moon Knight is about the characters, and it's, like, interesting and makes you wonder and think, and it's engaging, you know? And she liked it. And that same way, I like that the MCU just keeps getting bigger, keeps on adding more variety, more types of characters, more types of genres to their categories. And eventually, like, even if you're not a big fan of all of their stuff, eventually something they put out is going to be good, and it's going to be your cup of tea. That's what's so special about the variety of the MCU. That's why I love the shared universes like that. I MCU pilled my mom by showing her Ant-Man because she has a crush on Paul Rudd. That might do it. Now she watches all those movies with me? Hell yeah. Yeah, I like the crossover stuff. I know that people do like the soy, crossover soy. But I mean, it's fun, you know? It's like, oh shit, these two characters that are in individual separate mediums as far as I've been, you know, capable of seeing to this point are coming together to work together. And this is their first time meeting, and I like them both independently, and it's cool, and it's, like, I don't know, it is actually a soy face moment. It's fun. Yeah, crossovers are dope. Like, I don't know. I like it. It's cool. It's fun. Hate me if you must.
About the all-powerful Whammon who started the Avengers, apparently.
Whammon?
Black Widow was already an established character, but she was also a contradiction to the narrative that female superheroes were just now being taken seriously. That they are just now allowed to be depicted as strong and independent, and that they are just now being given their own movies and screen time. As the saying goes, those who preach the loudest are the most fake. And the only reason there wasn't a female-led superhero in the MCU, a movie
This guy is like legitimately putting on the biggest veneer of false rage I've ever seen in my life for his viewers, and he's the one saying those that preach the loudest are fake. Good one, buddy.
movie starring Black Widow, a heroine that the fans had come to love and adore and wanted for damn near a decade. The only reason that movie wasn't made in the MCU during phases 1, 2, and 3 was because of Marvel themselves. So please, don't defend the message Kevin Feige and his regime are preaching from their glass pedestal.
Wait, this is actually based. Yeah, they believed that a female-led superhero movie wouldn't do well enough up until that point. Listen, to make it very clear, Marvel, the MCU, Disney, whatever, they will not push the envelope as far as like the progressive agenda, quote unquote, any further than it is already socially acceptable to do so, okay? The MCU is not pushing the agenda of progressivism. The MCU is merely adapting to the times and maintaining the most milquetoast possible representation in order to simultaneously appeal to the, let's be honest, the wallets of progressive, people in the market, while also hopefully not disenfranchising the certainly existent amount of racists and reactionaries that watch this kind of comic book media that get mad every time a minority is on screen. But they still include them enough that, because keeping the nerd rage going does bring clicks, and that's good for Marvel as well. So I guess cost-benefit analysis showed that it was best to push the more progressive narrative in their media, because that's a win-win for them. Like, to be clear, I don't think that Disney or the MCU or whatever is on this altruistic mission to actually make the world a better place and help marginalized people by representing them. It's all about making money. Disney's a company. These movies are a business. They're a product. And first and foremost, the number one priority is to make money. But that's the case for all of some of the best media we've seen. A lot of it, at least. I mean, granted, plenty of it was not driven by the profit motive, but plenty of it has been, like The Lord of the Rings is one of the best movie franchises of all time. And granted, Peter Jackson probably personally didn't care too much if the movies did all that well, because he was able to make them all at once and was able to get the full investment. But like those that invested in the movie and were responsible for the movie even being able to be made in the first place, they definitely cared about it making money. And they believed like it was a risky investment, but they believed that it would work, even though Peter Jackson was an indie horror filmmaker who made like cheesy, corny horror films. Somehow dropped one of the best, if not, no, actually the best fantasy franchise of all time.
Because they are gigantic
ever adapted to screen.
Hypocrites, as most preachers are. And Jon Favreau, Joss Whedon, and Stan Lee accomplished what Kevin Feige is now trying to do, but it was done much better and far more organically a damn near decade ago, before Captain Marvel ever existed in the MCU. And it's not a coincidence that this agenda has essentially gone into overdrive mode now that the late great Stan Lee has passed away.
Whoa. Oh my god, are you actually fucking kidding me? Okay, hold on. I gotta do something for a second. What an absolute scumfuck. What an absolute scum-fucking piece of shit. Oh my god. That's digging up the corpse of Stan Lee to push your fucking agenda. Here, let me actually find an actual quote from Stan Lee so we're not putting words into his mouth. Even though I've kind of had like a little bit of a small drama, you could say, with Creationist Cat on Twitter recently, or a little while ago or whatever, I still really think their videos are good, and they made a fantastic video like about a year ago, I'd say, about these conservative grifter types and how they are fake comic book fans. And one of my favorite parts of this video is a segment, a video clip of Stan Lee that he incorporates. Or actually, no, I think it's a quote from Stan Lee that he incorporates, in which Stan Lee gives a little insight to his motivations when it comes to the writing of some of his favorite characters and stuff. It's a good segment, so I'm gonna go ahead and find that. Yeah, let's hear it from the horse's mouth himself.
Heroes, this is Stan Lee coming at you. Want you to know, Marvel has always been and always will be a reflection of the world right outside our window. That world may change and evolve, but the one thing that will never change is the way we tell our stories of heroism. Those stories have room for everyone, regardless of their race, gender, religion, or color of their skin. The only things we don't have room for are hatred, intolerance, and bigotry. That man next to you, he's your brother. That woman over there, she's your sister. And that kid walking by, hey, who knows? He may have the proportionate strength of a spider. We're all part of one big family, the human family, and we all come together in the body of Marvel. And you're part of that family. You're part of the Marvel universe that moves ever upward. And
I know I'm part of the MCU. I did a whole video about why I'm part of the MCU. I am canonically. I do exist in the MCU, it's true.
Onward to greater glory. In other words, Excelsior.
True! He said the thing. He said the thing! Okay, listen. Stan Lee is based. That is not the clip I was actually looking for. I was looking and thinking of a different clip. I won't torture Cherry any further. I'll paraphrase the clip as best I can. Basically, it was Stan Lee recalling, DC Comics came to him asking for him to, I don't think he was going to write a new line of like heroes for them. I think they were asking for like reference. And his idea, Stan Lee's idea, and what Stan Lee always found to be the most interesting idea for how he could write a new line of comics for like Batman, Superman, etc. to make them more interesting, would be to race, gender, and sexuality swap them. This is back in like the 60s or the 80s, maybe the 70s. I'd ballpark it. This is when this quote comes from, and he said, yeah, like, I always figured, like if I wanted to make Batman more interesting, I'd make him a, poor black man and see how that would, work out. How much more, how I could change up his storyline. How does he become Batman if he starts from that place or whatever? I would make this character, gay or whatever. And that's literally the quote is like him talking about how for fun or just for ideas and how he could like make more creative like paths for the characters to go down. He could reinvent the characters as, what if this character was black and came from a different upbringing? What if this character was a woman and gay? Like that was literally something he'd think about and wanted to do and even suggested for writing new comic stories. It's a thing he did do. We're talking about the guy who wrote the X-Men. Stan Lee made the X-Men. The X-Men is literally a direct reference to like the civil rights movement and like the Black Panther Party and the fights for black liberation in America in like the 1960s. Like a direct reference. It's very on the nose. It's not subtle. I mean, can you maybe imagine what historical figure X-Men might be referring to, even if Magneto might be a little bit more reminiscent of said figure, if we're gonna like draw, I guess, comparisons for it, because that's what I've seen online. Like, yeah, I don't know. I always thought that like Stan Lee took a lot of inspiration from like MLK, Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, just the general like the whole of the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s for his inspiration in a lot of his comics, particularly the X-Men. We all know what it was an analogy for. I mean, Stan Lee and most of those comic book artists are all a bunch of woke hippies. Come on, let's be real. Anyone who claims that this woke agenda happened because Stan Lee died, you're living in delusion, okay? As if Stan Lee had that much creative control over these movies in the first place.
And has left his company in piss-poor hands with hack writers and politically driven morons who don't know how to create anything, as I'll soon get to.
How much control did Stan Lee have over these movies, by the way, before his death? Like, did he have final say? Did he get to veto things? Like, not much. I know he was, like, obviously on set, and he cameoed, but, like, I'm sure maybe they referenced him and stuff, but, like, I highly doubt that, like, Stan Lee could go on there and say, no, I don't like this scene. Don't do this. I don't like this casting. I don't like how you wrote this character. I'm vetoing. I don't think he ever had the ability to do this. Like, what I love about this channel is that he's so confident in his very, very strong opinions here. And he was being very like authoritative about it too. He's admitted he hasn't seen most of what he's criticizing, and he's going off of trailers and whatnot. He's used the most backwards logic I've seen in a media review YouTuber in a very long time. He's also accusing people who are passionate about an issue of being virtue signalers while also being extremely passionate about this and not realizing the hypocrisy, or the irony, I should say. Have we seen enough of this video? Chat, do we continue? One, if we continue. Two, if we wrap it up. I don't feel like this guy can... I feel like we've heard the same point 20 times from this guy. To be clear, all right, listen, I'm honestly going to take a very wild speculative guess and say this guy probably doesn't know a lot about politics, and if we had a conversation about it, I'd be able to pin him down pretty easily on this. There is no real good reason to get mad about these elements of the media in and of themselves. I am able to criticize the way that Disney commodifies and in many ways you could say cheapens diversity with the way they've done some of their presentation, like that one scene in Endgame, and then obviously like the, you know, obviously Captain Marvel, that end scene where she discovers her true self, and it's like, I'm just a girl and all that shit. Yeah, that shit was cringe, right? Like, I agree with that, but like, if that's what you're fixated on, that demonstrates to me your priorities aren't on criticizing the bad story or the poor quality of the media. It's more so on recognizing the poor quality of the media or the problems with the story, but then using the existence of, in some cases, just a perceived, agenda. In some cases, they get mad where, like, I legitimately don't think the people behind the media intended to make, like, a diverse game, like, so to say. Like, I remember when when Battlefield 1 was announced and they dropped the trailer or, like, the promotional footage or the media or whatever, and they had, like, there was the black guy who was a soldier in World War I for, like, the Allies there. They got super mad about it, and they raised hell over it, despite the fact that it's a stretch, but technically, historically, yeah, there would be black American men fighting in World War I, theoretically, in the situations there. Why was that controversial? They claimed it was historically inaccurate. That was their claim. And of course it wasn't. It ended up, yeah, it was literally the Harlem Hellfighters division, like, they were referencing, which, yeah, he was, like, that character was literally part of the Harlem Hellfighters. I'm pretty sure that was confirmed. And that was a real life thing. So yeah, they were all full of shit. They were just complaining because there was a black guy in the game and they were mad. And I genuinely don't think that was like a diversity thing they were doing there either. That was really just like gamers being mad about there being a black person and dreaming up the idea of there being an agenda in the first place. Here, I would argue, yeah, this is probably like a conscious effort to make a woke movie, quote unquote, but like, couldn't this movie be woke and still be good? I'm curious. I want to ask him that. If you kept all the woke elements in this movie, but then like improved the other parts of it, would you still have a problem with the woke elements? Because if it's the woke elements in and of themselves that he has a problem with, I'd like to know why. I'm curious if it's because it's dishonest and it's coming from a company like Disney that's just trying to profit, or if he finds the message to be abhorrent in some way. If he finds the message to be abhorrent, then, well, he's a bigot. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you think the idea of being anti-racist and pro-LGBT is bad, then, I mean, I don't even think he'd disagree with that. But if it really is just like the way it's presented, maybe, or something like that, then maybe there's some like agreement we can come to. But to be clear, I just feel like when people hyperfixate on the woke aspect of a poor piece of media, or not even a poor piece of media, but a lackluster piece of media or a disappointing piece of media, it feels like they're just trying to scapegoat all of that media's problems onto something that conveniently they happen not to like. And why don't they like that? Well, you'll have to think about that. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Well, that said, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider dropping a like. It helps the channel and my stream and the video itself when it goes out as a segment a lot. You can also subscribe and ring the bell icon on my channel if you want to see more from me. And if you want to see more from me on the internet, of course, you can follow my social medias, all linked down below, including my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and fan Discord. And if you want to support me financially, you can donate, subscribe, and gift subs directly on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me directly on YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or Patreon. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.